The Security Council now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. Members of the Council have before them document S/2024/448, the text of a draft resolution submitted by the United States of America. The Council is ready to proceed to the vote on the draft resolution before it. I now give the floor to those members of the Council who wish to make statements before the vote. I give the floor to the representative of the United States of America.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, the last 8 months have been nothing short of devastating. For Israelis who lost loved ones on October 7th, when Hamas set this conflict into motion by carrying out acts of unthinkable violence. For Israelis and people from more than 16 other countries whose sons and daughters, brothers and sisters are still being held hostage by Hamas. For Israelis who face constant rocket bombardment from Hamas, rockets that are fired off by terrorists hiding in civilian areas within Gaza. The past 8 months have also been devastating for Palestinian civilians in Gaza. Nearly 2 million Palestinians have had to flee from one place to another in search of safety. And for so many, that safety has been elusive. My heart aches for the young child who will forever be traumatized by seeing their family members killed. For all Palestinians who've lost loved ones in this fighting. And for humanitarian workers, people who put their lives on the line to deliver aid to those in dire need, who've been caught in the crosshairs at an unprecedented level. We continue to call on Israel to do everything possible to protect civilians. But let's not forget that Hamas's leaders are the ones who have put civilians at risk by hiding in tunnels underground and facilities that are near civilians and doing nothing to shelter those civilians. I've rarely ever seen anything so egregious and cowardly. Palestinian civilians are living through sheer hell through no fault of their own. And the humanitarian situation in Gaza has gotten worse and worse and worse. Families are living in makeshift conditions, unsure of what the next day holds. Millions are grappling with the uncertainty of what will be left when they are allowed to return home. I think about the parents trying to find food for their families, about the child who's been forced to stop their education, about the elderly person who no longer has access to essential medicines. Colleagues, after 8 months of devastation and pain and trauma, what is needed now more than ever is for the fighting to end in a sustainable way. The United States and every single country in this chamber want to see an immediate ceasefire with the release of hostages. We've heard those calls time and time again since October 7th. Now the opportunity is here. We must seize it, and we must speak with one voice. For months, the United States has worked around the clock alongside Egypt and Qatar to broker a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. Because we know this is the best way, actually the only way, to bring about a durable end to this war. Since the brief ceasefire and hostage release last November, such a deal has proven elusive. Why? Because Hamas has refused to accept any agreement. But right now, there is another opportunity. Because as President Biden recently announced, Israel has agreed to a comprehensive deal. That is the deal now on the table, which is nearly identical to Hamas's own proposals. This deal would bring hostages home, ensure Israel's security, enable a surge of humanitarian relief and essential services, including water and electricity, medical facilities, and rubble removal to Palestinian civilians in Gaza, and set the stage for a political settlement that provides a better future for Israelis and Palestinians alike. This deal has been endorsed by countries across the region, including Algeria, Egypt, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and the UAE, as well as by the G7 and those 16 countries whose citizens are being held by Hamas. Now we're all waiting. We're waiting on Hamas to agree to the ceasefire deal it claims to want. But we cannot afford to wait and wait and wait. With every passing day, needless suffering continues. And so all of us, as members of this council, have a critical role to play. We can help bring about peace by adopting the resolution before us, which calls on Hamas to take the ceasefire deal and urges both parties to fully implement the deal's terms without delay and without conditions. This resolution, put forward by the United States after consultations with all council members, makes clear that the world wants an immediate ceasefire with the release of hostages. The resolution also explains the framework of the deal. So let me take a moment to lay that out. The first phase of this agreement would last for 6 weeks and include an immediate, full, and complete ceasefire with the release of hostages, including women, the elderly, and the wounded, the return of the remains of some hostages who have been killed, the exchange of Palestinian prisoners, the withdrawal of Israeli forces from the populated areas in Gaza, the return of Palestinian civilians to their homes and neighborhoods in all areas of Gaza, including in the north, and the safe and effective distribution of humanitarian assistance in Gaza, including housing units delivered by the international community. Importantly, the proposal says that if negotiations take longer than 6 weeks in phase one, the ceasefire will continue as long as negotiations continue. And the United States, Egypt, and Qatar would work to ensure negotiations keep going in good faith until all the agreements are reached and phase two begins. In the second phase, upon agreement of the parties, there would be a permanent end to hostilities in exchange for the release of all other hostages still in Gaza and a full withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza. Phase three would see the start of a major multi-year reconstruction plan for Gaza and the return of the remains of Israelis and others still in Gaza to their families. Colleagues, this is the deal on the table. Israel accepted this deal because it ensures its security. As President Biden made clear, Hamas is no longer capable of carrying out another October 7th, and the United States' commitment to Israel's self-defense is ironclad. Colleagues, I'll also note that this resolution rejects any demographic or territorial changes in Gaza, including any actions that reduce the territory of Gaza. And it reiterates this Council's unwavering commitment to the vision of a negotiated two-state solution, where Israelis and Palestinians live side by side in peace within secure and recognized borders, consistent with international law and relevant UN resolutions. We all agreed that a negotiated outcome along these lines is the only way forward. The draft before us also stresses the importance of unifying the West Bank and Gaza under the leadership of a reformed and revitalized Palestinian Authority. And this text recalls resolutions this Council has adopted since October 7th, including Resolution 2712, 2720, and 2728, all of which demanded that all parties to the conflict protect civilians. Colleagues, we need Hamas to agree to the ceasefire deal, and then we need Israel and Hamas to implement the deal without delays or conditions. I don't want to keep waking up to news reports of more fighting and more loss of life. I don't want the families of hostages, many of whom I know personally, to endure even one more day without their loved ones. I don't want another Palestinian family, including the relatives of people I have met with, to experience any more loss or suffering. I want to see an enduring ceasefire where Israel is safe from the threat of further terrorist attacks and rocket fire, and Palestinians can begin rebuilding their lives in safety and security. I want to see families reunited. I want to see Palestinian children safe and fed and back in school. I want to see people return to their homes. We all want to see this better future. Those of us here in this room, people across the world, and most of all, those living under this terrible conflict. And so, colleagues, we must seize the opportunity before us. We must speak out with one voice in support of peace. I urge all council members to vote yes on this resolution, to vote yes for peace. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the United States for their statement. I shall put the draft resolution to the vote now. Will those in favor of the draft resolution contained in document S/2024/448 please raise their hand? Those against? Abstentions? The result of the voting is as follows: 14 votes in favor, 0 votes against, 1 abstention. The draft resolution has been adopted as Resolution 2735. I now give the floor to those members of the Council who wish to make statements after the vote. I give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you again, Mr. President. Colleagues, today this Council sent a clear message to Hamas. Accept the ceasefire deal on the table. Israel has already agreed to this deal, and the fighting could stop today if Hamas would do the same. I repeat, the fighting could stop today. This Council and countries across the region and the world have endorsed this agreement. Hamas can now see that the international community is united behind a deal that will save lives and help Palestinian civilians in Gaza start to rebuild and heal. United behind a deal that will reunite hostages with their families after 8 months in captivity. United behind a deal that would lead to a more secure Israel and unlock the possibility of more progress, including calm along Israel's northern border with Lebanon. We cannot forget the Israelis displaced from their homes in northern Israel under threat from Hezbollah. These attacks from terrorist groups backed by Iran must stop. They have to stop. Colleagues, the ceasefire deal would pave the way toward an enduring cessation of hostilities and a better future for all. As President Biden acknowledged just the other day, the Palestinian people have endured sheer hell in this war, started by Hamas. There's an opportunity to chart a different course. Hamas must take it. Egypt and Qatar have assured the United States that they are continuing to work to ensure that Hamas engages constructively, and the United States will help ensure that Israel lives up to its obligations as well, assuming Hamas accepts the deal. Over the past 8 months, this council has often faced divisions, and the world has taken notice with understandable frustration. But there's another side to this story, because today we adopted the 4th resolution on this conflict. For the 4th time, we have spoken out and made clear the only way to end this cycle of violence and build a durable peace is through a political settlement, one that ensures Israel no longer lives in the shadow of a terrorist group and is further integrated with the region. And I want to make clear that Israel will always have the right to defend itself against threats to its security and to bring those responsible for October 7th to justice. Colleagues, today we also reaffirmed our commitment to the vision of 2 states where Israelis and Palestinians live side by side in peace within secure and recognized borders, consistent with international law and relevant UN resolutions, and where a revitalized and reformed Palestinian Authority leads a unified West Bank and Gaza. This is the future that we must help bring about. And this all starts with the ceasefire deal that this council endorsed today, and that this council unequivocally called on Hamas to accept. Colleagues, today we voted for peace. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the United States for their statement. I now give the floor